Web Marketing That Works podcast, episode 147, with today's guest, John Dwyer, aka JD.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
My name's Adam Franklin and welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. This is the show for people like you and like me who love marketing on the web. You'll be taken behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments. We look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll confess what's failed and reveal the truth about what really works. So the show is brought to you by our book, which is called Web Marketing That Works. And there is a gift for you for listening, and that is the bundle of free marketing templates. There's 33 of those, and you can download those at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Okay, so today's guest is John Dwyer. You may know him as JD. He runs the Institute of Wow, and he is a marketing consultant and trainer with years of experience. He's also co-host of the podcast called Sales for Profit. Now, JD has some awesome stories and some really practical marketing tips, particularly when it comes to using, well, it's not that old-fashioned, but using the old mobile phone and text message marketing. So there's some very cool tips coming up in the show as to how he keeps his clients fully booked with work. And I think with that introduction, it is time to head over to the show with JD. It's Adam Franklin here, and on the line I've got JD, aka John Dwyer. How's things?
G'day, mate. How are you? Not too bad at all.
I'm good. Now, thanks for joining me today. I've got a couple of questions for you. You've been obviously doing marketing for quite a while and you know the ins and outs of what works. What's actually working right now?
Yeah, good question. I know this might sound, I won't say old-fashioned, but it might sound a bit boring. But, you know, what I'm finding is working for most of the clients that we have is something that they haven't tried before, and yet it's been around now for many, many years, and it's called SMS messaging. And as staid as that might sound in terms of, oh, that's not real sexy, it's getting some incredible results for clients of mine who are using it properly. And of course, like any communications, it's a matter of using it properly. And I guess the open rates speak for themselves, Adam, because you and I both know that if you've got a mildly warm list, you might get on your email blasts a 20 to 35% open rate. If you've got a cold list, you might be lucky if you get 10 to 15% open rate. And the interesting thing with text messaging, of course, is that you get a 94% open rate within 3 minutes just about every time.
Wow. So let's talk about what the correct way of doing it is versus the way where people might make mistakes. So what's the right way of doing SMS marketing?
Probably, look, my business, Adam, as you know, I'm going to give you a plug alert here, but my business is called the Institute of Wow. So it's all about me teaching business owners how to add wow factor to their marketing. And basically, it's direct response marketing with a bit of pixie dust on top. So it's all about providing clients, business owners with ways to market their products or service that are measurable. So I'm not a great fan of telling people to sponsor the Brisbane Broncos or to put an ad on the side of a bus or the back of a taxi, because I've never met anyone who's ever bought anything off those particular, communication mediums. And it's all about doing stuff that's measurable. So therefore, what I say to people if they're going to be doing text messaging is go down the problem solution path. So, for example, we have a restaurant in Melbourne called the Lobster Cave. It's a seafood restaurant in an upmarket area at Beaumaris in Melbourne. And he's the only restaurant in the world that's full 100% of the year. So therefore, every single night he's full 100%, because all he does is walks into his restaurant at about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he asks his secretary, what sort of occupancy rate do we have tonight? And she says 40 seats out of 100 are booked. And he says, well, send out one of JD's text messages, which is one of my sort of templated text messages, and it will say something like a dinner for two tonight at $68, but it will give them a problem. It'll say, are you bored this afternoon at work and you're looking for something interesting to do tonight? Well, guess what? You can come to the Lobster Cave, special deal, $68 for 2 people for lobster tail meal. Now, at this restaurant, you don't leave before you spend $200 because he upsells everything else to you. But within 15 minutes, we're not talking like, within 15 days or 15 months. We're saying within 15 minutes of that text message going out to 500 of his, 10,000 list, he will have filled his restaurant tonight. And he does the same thing tomorrow, the next day, the next day.
That's incredible. So are these messages, are they going out to people who've actually opted in and given you their mobile number, or is this a cold list?
Yeah, no, absolutely. In his instance, for example, the likes of you and I, Adam, we're broken record, aren't we, telling our clients to get data, to collect data. So because we're in the game that we're in, we're saying all the time, for goodness sake, have a free report on your homepage of your website and collect data when people download it. And if you're in a bricks and mortar business, then make sure you collect data. And that's what we did. We actually incentivized his wait staff 50 cents each for every name and contact detail that they got throughout the last 18 months. And so he's up to something like 30,000 people on his database at the moment. But when he wants to fill his restaurant tonight, he only just sends out 500. And if he fills, 90% of the vacant seats, he'll send out another 100 just to fill the rest of the seats. And yeah, it's very, very simple. I had one of my seminars recently, and there was a guy who owned a couple of restaurants in the room. And he came up to me and he said, look, I'll join your coaching program, but hopefully we'll get more value out of what I've just seen in this 2 or 3 hours worth of seminar. But he said that idea just alone, as simple as it is, it's not rocket science, but as simple as it is, that would pay for the membership of your program. And I said, well, thank you very much. Could you just stand there whilst I get my iPhone out?
No, it's so simple, and those simple things often work the best, right? Because SMS was sort of out of vogue, or is out of vogue in many respects, because people go, oh, it's annoying or it's intrusive, but used in the right way when people have given their details and it's for a local business or whatever, like you're talking about. Wow, that's phenomenal. You can fill up the restaurant so quickly.
But you know what, Adam? The thing is that I'm a bit of a smart aleck, and so therefore when I'm doing my song and dance seminars, I will say to people, who thinks McDonald's is a good marketer? And everyone puts their hand up, because I think it should be acknowledged that, yes, they're a pretty good marketer. But if I was running McDonald's, I'd sack their marketing manager tomorrow. And the reason I would is because today in Australia, they've got 1.7 million people come through their McDonald's restaurants today in Australia, and yet they have no clue any one of those people are, because they don't collect any data.
Staggering, hey?
Yeah, it is. It is, but you know what? You could go to the Melbourne Grand Final or the AFL, you could go to the Sydney Grand Final or the Rugby League, and they get, 100,000, 80,000 people to the Grand Final. But I don't know what they're smoking, but they've got no clue who came, because the ticketing agencies do, but the football codes don't. So it's just madness. It's craziness all around us.
It is. So what advice would you then give, say, a football club or a McDonald's marketing manager in terms of that? Like, what specific things would you put in place or suggest they put in place?
In the football club's instance, my first and foremost piece of advice would be stop employing former footballers as your managers. And anyone who's listening to this now who's played rugby league, go, well, I'm going to switch this off. That guy's a smart aleck, But yeah, look, I used to have the rugby league football card license business. So I took over from Scanlon's Bubblegum in the 90s and ended up producing the Bubblegum football card. So I dealt with all of the people who were running the rugby league code. And I've got to tell you, most of them have been in too many scrums. And thank goodness Channel 9 came along to run the rugby league, because the ex-footballers would not do a great job at it. I know I'm being streaky and a bit sarcastic, but that is the problem. There are too many people in these codes who were former players who just don't understand this sort of stuff. And, there's no way that I would have 80,000 people at my dinner party and I had no clue who was there. That would just be madness. So my view is that even Westfield or any of these big shopping malls, they're crazy. They're just nuts. I mean, they let people come through their business every single day. What I'd be doing is having some girls in uniforms at the front of every entrance of those shopping centres, giving people the opportunity to win a $100,000 prize, which would be insured, so you don't have to come up with $100,000 yourself. You just pay a couple of $1,000 insurance to the big insurance companies, and they'll insure that prize for you. I won't bore you with all the details of that, but who wants to be a millionaire? Channel 9 doesn't give that $1 million away. It's given away by Lloyd's of London. So the fact is that you'd have people on the entrance to all of these shopping centres, and you'd say, listen, on their T-shirt it would say, would you like to win X dollars? Just give me your contact details. Now, would they collect everyone that walks through the Westfield shopping centre front door? Of course they wouldn't. But I tell you what, they might get 20 or 25 or 30%. Can you imagine just how valuable that database would be to all the stores inside Westfield? No one does it. Nobody does it. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. It's just nuts. It's crazy.
It's like a in-person real-life landing page. Someone sort of offering you something, collecting the details and letting you then move on into the shopping centre once you've either opted in or decided you don't want to.
It is. I don't know what you and I, given that we're more likely online marketers these days, I don't know what we would call the opt-in facility when it's in the offline world. But yeah, it's exactly that. And look, even without a database, but even a big fan base on your Facebook page and so forth. I mean, there's a company you well know because of the stuff that you're got a lot of expertise in terms of the social media area. There's a lot of people, as you know, Adam, out there who don't have your skills and your measurable mentality that are, I think, probably touting to business owners that they can help them with social media, and most of the time they don't. I love a campaign that's being done by Sprinkles Cupcakes in America, where
I was hoping you'd mention this is my very next question. So you've you've read my mind, mate. Carry on.
I thought, because you and I had spoken before and I brought this up, and I thought, I know what I'll bring up to Adam. I had a bit of a win with this story last time. I'm going to show off again.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
But it's a good one, mate. It's just really, really simple. The only reason I bring it up is because when I'm saying to you, look, anybody who doesn't collect data is a little bit silly. In this instance, of course, they've got their Facebook fan base out there, and what they do is post at 5 o'clock every morning a whisper word. Now, Sprinkles Cupcakes in America is a chain of cupcake stores right around the States. And at 5 o'clock this morning, they would have posted a whisper word, and let's just say today's whisper word was sunshine. And what happens if you're one of the first 50, which is BS, they'll take the first 500, of course, but they say the first 50 to give an urgency factor. If you're one of the first 50 to come into any one of the Sprinkles Cupcake stores and you whisper today's whisper word, let's say sunshine, then you get a free cupcake. But statistics are that 72% of people buy coffee, bagel, and more cupcakes. And so it's the cheapest lead generation that you could ever think of.
Yeah, that's so smart, and that's being done through Twitter as hashtags. So super simple, no cost involved, and they've got chains. That's a chain across America, right?
Yep, very, very simple. And I've just picked up a restaurant as a client here on the Gold Coast, and they're in the middle of Surfers Paradise. And he's being, for quite some time, I think, ripped off by someone, some 19-year-old who's been telling him how to use social media, and that means they post photos of their milkshakes and beers. Like, that's going to make people race into his restaurant. So I've said to him, now, look, start using it in a more sensible, measurable way. And I've given him the whisper word concept. I tried to pretend that it was an idea of mine, but I think he found out that it came from Sprinkles. But anyway, and so therefore, he's about to launch it, and I know what's going to happen. It'll just go nuts. And in their instance, it's obviously to get people in for breakfast. In his instance, because he happens to be a restaurant, he'll be doing it of an afternoon for the evening.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. Okay, JD, so I'm a very big Seinfeld fan, so I've got to ask this question. It was my favourite TV show sort of in high school years growing up. You had a big coup with Jerry Seinfeld. Can you talk us through that story for us?
Mate, I reckon for the last few years I've been a really painful person to be around, because I think I was a show-off beforehand, but a few years ago I scored Jerry Seinfeld to be the spokesman for a client of mine, which happened to be a small bank, and I say small bank, a $5 billion business, but compared to the Commonwealth Bank, it's relatively small. It's called the Greater Building Society. And I was able to convince Jerry to become the spokesman for them, and consequently he did all their TV ads for them. I flew over to New York to, sort of work with him over a few-year period, and it catapulted their home loan business, through the stratosphere. I sound like a marketer, don't I? But it really did lift their home loan stuff. And so for the last few years, there's no one wants to come anywhere near me because I keep on saying to it, do you know I work with Jerry Seinfeld? Do you know?
Well, that holds a lot of weight with me because I love Jerry. Now, how did you go about securing that? Had you forged a friendship with him, or did you reach out cold because you thought maybe he'd be a good fit? Like, what was the sort of backstory that you probably told everybody about at dinner parties?
I wish I could have, I wish I could have a story that was really engaging, but it was just that I was a pain in the ass. I just followed him up and followed him up and followed him up. When I said to him, eventually we met for the first time in New York in his office, I said, look, what made you do this? Because whilst, he cost a few dollars, the fact of the matter is the guy's, got more money than God. So I said, look, why did you do this? And he said, well, number one reason is that I thought that if I didn't say yes, you'd never go away. And I said, no, look, my wife says that persistence is, more important than intelligence. Thank goodness in my instance. And he said the second reason was that he loves Australia, and no one from Australia had ever asked him, would you believe? And look, just really quickly, I know we're out of time, but just really quickly, in all seriousness, Adam, what happened is that I had been chasing Robin Williams beforehand, and I flew over to New York and we did the deal. Robin Williams actually signed up to do the deal, and my head was the size of a doorway, so therefore I rang the Building Society and said, look, you better build a statue outside your head office. And they said, of who? I said, of me. I just got Robin Williams to do your advertising. And I think God was watching and decided that I had too big a head, because by the time my plane arrived back in Sydney, there was a text message from Robin Williams saying that he had to pull out because he got a movie. And so I got my own back. And so therefore, Jerry Seinfeld was the second in the line. And not my choice, by the way. This was a survey that we had done amongst members and non-members as who would be any personality anywhere in the world that would be cheeky and irreverent, which was the Virgin-esque sort of, brand persona of the grader. And Robin Williams came first, Jerry Seinfeld came second, I think Jim Carrey came third. So just my luck, all these big stars came up the top. I was hoping it would have been Rove, who would have been easy to get. So anyway, I just worked for a few months after that, just, contacting Jerry's office, and the emails would bounce, he wouldn't answer them, all this sort of stuff. And one day I learned that his manager was a guy in his 70s called George Shapiro, who had an office in Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. So I found his details and I rang the office at 2 o'clock in the morning just to see if there was an answering machine. And sure enough, there was an answering machine. Press 1 for George, press 2 for someone else, and 3 for someone else. So I pressed 1 for George, and I had sent an email that day talking about what we would love Jerry to do in terms of, doing TV commercials for the bank. And so I left my very best Aussie impersonation at 2 in the morning, knowing that he would listen to it when he came into the office next day. And it was, g'day, George. Look, it's John Dwyer here, mate. I'm known as JD. I just thought I'd ring up, mate, and dig a cob of blue sport and just ask whether or not Jerry might be interested in doing something down under, You're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. I'm in the building society the day after because I was visiting the client, and they'd always left a bit of an office aside for me, which was nice to do for a consultant. The phone rings, and it's a girl on the other end of the phone saying, oh, look, is this John Dwyer? Because I've got George Shapiro on the phone. And I thought it was someone taking the you-know-what out of me in the office. So I treated him like just terribly in the first 60 seconds. Oh, hey, John, it's George Shapiro. And I went, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. What do you want? I thought it was someone taking the mickey out of me in the office because I'm used to taking the mickey out of everyone else in the greater building society. As it turned out, I realised it was the real George Shapiro when he said, I want to ask you a question about the greater building society. I said, yeah, what is it? He goes, exactly what do they build? I thought, oh, shit. So anyway, I let him in on the joke and told him that, what I thought had happened, it was just a G-up. And he laughed and laughed, and he has a pretty wicked sense of humour. And we got on like a house on fire. And, it was half an hour into that phone conversation before the name Jerry Seinfeld came up.
Wow.
So there you go. Sometimes it's just a matter of building rapport. And when I did bring it up, I just said, look, we'd like Jerry to do whatever he likes. We just would like him to be the spokesman for the Building Society. And I've sent an email over to you. Maybe you might get the chance to look at it and pass it on. And 3 days later, we got an email to say, you know what, Jerry's looked at your concept and you've asked him to take the mickey out of all the banks. And, he takes the mickey out of people for a living. So we reckon it's a good idea. Let's do it.
Oh, that's unreal.
Yeah. Yeah, so there you go.
I love it. So, JD, let's have a quick chat about your podcast and how people can listen into that.
Thank you, mate. Look, I have a partner in crime with my podcast, and for those who are listening at the moment, you can see that I have a bit of fun and there's a bit of sarcasm in most of the conversations we have with people. So I've teamed up with a guy called Greg Cassar, Cassar, and Greg's a great, as you know, Adam, he's a great online expert, absolutely probably in the top 3 or 4 or 5 in Australia. And I became buddies with him some years ago. And as it turned out, he suggested to me about a year or so ago, look, why don't we do a podcast together and you can be Don Lane and I'll be Bert Newton. And I said, yep, let's do that. So that's what we do. I've got a few years on Greg, so therefore I bring a lot of offline marketing concepts to the table. I know enough about online to sort of get myself out of trouble, but I leave that to him because that's absolutely his expertise. So we yin and yang on a podcast which is called salesforprofit.com. And so we have a lot of fun and we release one every 10 days to every 14 days. So salesforprofit.com, he gets in the plug again.
Good stuff. And finally, tell us a bit about the seminars and everything that you run.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. Goodness me, you're very good with letting me put all these plugs in. Thank you very much, Adam.
I'm interested, that's why.
Oh, well, thank you. It's very nice of you. Mate, look, and by the way, so that anybody knows what salesforprofit.com is, it's all about marketing. So it's all about offline and online marketing for businesses in just about any industry, white collar, blue collar, it doesn't matter. And in terms of my seminars, Adam, you know that, in the world that you and I live in, there's unfortunately a bit of skepticism of seminars, and I don't blame it because a lot of the people running around doing these seminars really are not the real deal. I've come from a corporate world, so up until 4 or 5 years ago, I was basically providing consultancy to the likes of McDonald's and News Limited and 7-Eleven and Blockbuster Video and all these big companies. And I got into this sort of seminar world in the last 4 or 5 years not because I wanted to get into becoming a seminar speaker, but I thought the actual model itself was fantastic, where you sell once to many. In other words, you have a Tupperware party and you show your wizardry or your skills, and then at the end of that, if anyone wants to work with you, they can put their hand up. And so that's what I do. We have on the Gold Coast and Sydney once a month, these seminars. They go from 9 in the morning through to 5 in the afternoon. And we don't lock the doors and force people to run down the back of the room and buy things. We just simply show them this direct response, wow factor marketing that I preach. And if any of them are interested in doing anything with us, fine. If they just want to swipe all the ideas and take them back to their business the next day, that's fine as well. And if anyone's interested in coming to one of them on the Gold Coast or Sydney, then just go to the website, which is explodeyoursales.com.au, explodeyoursales.com.au.
Awesome. Well, I might have to come and check one of them out, JD. It sounds really useful, especially the sort of out of the box but very simple thinking and ideas that you've shared on the show today, particularly the SMS marketing, which just seems amazing. So thank you. That's the first time a guest has talked about that. So we appreciate your insights and appreciate your time joining us on the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Thank you.
My pleasure, Adam. And by the way, if you do come to the seminars, there's every chance in the world, given that your sense of humour is a little bit wicked, you'd probably be the heckler, wouldn't you, down the back of the room?
No, I'm a good student. We'll see.
Thanks, mate.
You'll see for in real life. Talk soon.
Thanks, mate. All the best.
See ya. And that's a wrap for my chat with JD. Now, some really cool stuff there. How about how he uses text messages to fill up his clients' restaurants? So simple, yet so very, very effective. And I don't dine out lots, but when I do, I'm never asked for my phone number. And you know what? There's so many restaurants within a stone's throw here in Bondi that if they message me and said, look, do you feel like coming down for dinner here tonight? We've got this special going on. Then chances are you'd probably look at the fridge and go, yeah, look, why not? So it makes sense from a marketing point of view. It makes sense from a person eating out's point of view. Really, really cool stuff. Of course, JD loves his story about Jerry Seinfeld. I really wanted to hear that firsthand, and really neat how he was able to chip away at that and the relationships and make it all happen in the long run. So again, if you want to find out more about JD, head to the Institute of Wow. That is theinstituteofwow.com, and check out all the stuff he's got going on. I'm going to make an effort to attend one of his marketing workshops. They run in Sydney and Gold Coast, so you may well see me there. Anyway, that is a wrap for today's show. If you found it valuable, and I hope you did, then I would love it if you left us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. If you've got feedback for me personally, send me an email, adam.franklin@bluewiremedia.com.au. And I've got a 5-star review here that I just want to share with you from iTunes. It says, clear, high-quality marketing awesomeness by David George Eddy. He says, if you are a business owner or digital marketing consultant, Adam and Toby's podcast is an absolute must. What I love about their approach is that they are great at demystifying online marketing. You'll get clear, practical, no-nonsense advice that you can action right away. No matter what your skill or experience level, subscribe and enjoy. So Dave, thank you for that. If you would like to leave a review, then you will get a shout out on one of the future episodes. So thanks, folks, and I look forward to seeing you on the next show.